Rain hammered the tin roof of the mechanic's shed, each drop echoing in the quiet night like the ticking of a broken clock. The smell of oil and burnt metal filled the air as Jace tightened the last bolt on the cargo hauler's engine. His hands were stained black, his back aching, but he didn't mind. It was just another night in the small outpost on the edge of the rim. Outside, the wind howled across the barren plains. Lightning lit up the horizon, revealing the jagged silhouettes of the mountains. Out there, beyond the safety of the settlement walls, strange shapes moved in the dark, shapes most humans never wanted to meet. Jay stepped outside to cool off. The rain was cold, almost icy. That was when he heard it, a sharp, almost human cry carried by the wind. It wasn't the usual sound of desert predators. This was different. It was pain, real pain. His instincts told him to stay put. The walls were there for a reason, but something in that cry pulled at him. Against every bit of common sense, Jace grabbed his jacket, a flashlight, and his tool bag, and slipped out the side gate. The rain made the ground slippery, and mud clung to his boots. The sound came again, weaker this time. Jace followed it into a narrow ravine where the shadows seemed to move on their own. That's when his flashlight beam caught something pale. Too pale for any animal he knew. It was huge. White scales shimmered faintly under the rain, almost glowing in the dark. A wing, tore and bent at an unnatural angle, was pinned under a rock. The creature's long neck twisted toward him, eyes like molten silver locking onto his. His breath caught. It wasn't a predator he'd ever seen before. It was a dragon, an alien dragon, and it was looking straight at him. The creature tried to pull away, but its movements were slow, trembling with exhaustion. Blood ran from the wound on its wing, pooling darkly in the mud. Jace's first thought was that it could kill him in a single swipe. His second thought was that it wasn't trying to. It was afraid. His heart pounded as he knelt slowly, keeping his voice low. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon blinked, as if it understood. The sound it made was softer now, almost like a whimper. Jace examined the rock, trapping the wing. It was heavy, maybe too heavy for him alone, but he had tools. He worked quickly, wedging a pry bar under the stone, pushing with all his strength. The dragon flinched when the rock shifted, but it didn't fight him. Inch by inch, he freed the wing. Up close, he could see the strange beauty of the creature. Its scales were white, but faint lines of blue light traced along them, pulsing like veins. Its breath came in ragged bursts, warm against his face, and its eyes never left him. When the rock finally rolled away, the dragon tried to lift his wing, but pain made it collapse again. Jace cursed under his breath. It needed more than freedom. It needed repair. And he just happened to be a mechanic. He pulled his tool bag closer, improvising splints from metal rods, and using strips of his own jacket to bind them. The dragon winced but stayed still. Its breathing slowed, becoming steadier. Rainwater washed the blood from its scales. The storm was getting worse. If he left it here, it wouldn't survive the night. Jace knew bringing it into the settlement was out of question. People would panic, and the guards would shoot first, ask questions later. He had to think fast. There was an old cargo shed at the edge of the plains, one no one used anymore. It wasn't much, but it had a roof and walls. Jace whistled softly, motioning for the dragon to follow. At first, it didn't move. Then, slowly, painfully, it began to limp after him. It took almost an hour to reach the shed. By the time they got there, Jace was soaked and shivering. He helped the dragon inside, spreading old tarps on the floor. The creature curled up, its massive body filling most of the space. It gave a low, almost grateful sound, then closed its eyes. Jace sat against the wall, watching it. He didn't know why he was doing this. Maybe because no one else would. Maybe because those silver eyes had looked at him not with rage, but with trust. He stayed until dawn, making sure it was still breathing. When the storm passed, Jace returned with food, meat from the settlement's market. The dragon ate slowly, carefully, as if unsure if it was allowed. Days turned into a week. The wing began to heal. And then, one morning it was gone. No sound, no trace. Just empty tarps and a faint imprint in the dust. Jace didn't tell anyone. Not the guards, not his friends. It became a secret he carried, a strange memory that sometimes made him wonder if it had even happened. Life went on. Ships came and went. Engines broke and he fixed them. And little by little, the memory faded into the background. Years later, he had almost forgotten. Almost, until the day the sky burned silver. The first sign something was wrong came with a sound. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't engines. It was deeper, like the earth itself groaning. People in the settlement stopped what they were doing, looking toward the horizon. The sky was changing. Bright streaks of silver light tore through the clouds, twisting like molten rivers. Jace was under a hauler, tightening a fuel valve, when the noise rattled the ground beneath him. He slid out, wiping his hands, and froze. The sky over the mountains glowed with an unearthly shimmer, the same shade of silver he had seen years ago, in a pair of dragon's eyes. The settlement alarms began to wail. Sirens screamed from the walls, and the guard towers lit up with searchlights. Jace heard voices shouting orders. Shields up. Get the civilians underground. Something was coming, and it wasn't friendly. A shadow passed over him. Huge. The air pressure changed, pushing dust across the ground. Jace looked up, and his heart skipped a beat. Wings. Massive, gleaming white wings. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then the shape tilted, circling, and the light caught its scales. Blue veins pulsed under the white surface, glowing like fire. It was the dragon, the same one he had saved. But it wasn't alone. Behind it, in the clouds, more shadows moved. Darker, jagged shapes, other dragons, but not like the albino. These were black-scaled, sharp-winged, their forms like living blades. The guards panicked, loading plasma rifles and locking targeting systems. To them, there was no difference. A dragon was a threat. Shoot them down, someone yelled from the command tower. Jace's gut twisted. If they fired, the albino wouldn't stand a chance, not against the wall guns. Without thinking, he sprinted toward the gate. The streets were chaos. People shoved past him, heading for the bunkers. A woman grabbed her child and ran, eyes wide with fear. Jace fought his way through, pushing against the flow. He had no plan, only one thought. He had to reach the wall before it was too late. The albino swooped lower, its shadow passing over him again. It roared, not in rage, but in warning. The black dragon split into two groups, some banking toward the hills, others diving straight for the settlement. Plasma cannons fired, turning the air into a blinding storm of light. Jace reached the main gate just as a guard was about to lock it. He grabbed the man's arm. Stop. That white one is not the enemy. The guard stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Are you crazy? They're all the enemy. No. Jace shouted over the noise. I know it. I fixed its wing. It remembers me. Before the guard could answer, the wall shuddered from an impact. A black dragon slammed into the outer shield, claws screeching against the energy barrier. Sparks exploded where it struck, and the shield dimmed for a moment. They couldn't hold forever. Then it happened. The albino dove, slamming into one of the black dragons with such force that both tumbled out of the sky. They hit the ground outside the wall, in a storm of dust and broken earth. The albino rose first, its head low, wings spread wide, blocking the others from advancing. Jace felt his chest tighten. It was protecting the settlement, but the guards didn't see that. Cannons swiveled toward the fight, locking on the albino. No, don't shoot it, Jace yelled, but his voice was swallowed by the roar of engines. He had seconds to act. His mind raced. Then he remembered the old cargo whistle. Years ago, when he was fixing the dragon's wing, he had used the whistle to guide it to the shed. It had been a simple sound, but the creature had learned it meant safety. Jace pulled the whistle from his tool belt. He carried it out of habit, never thinking he'd use it again, and blew. A sharp, piercing tone cut through the chaos. The albino's head snapped toward him instantly. For a second, its silver eyes locked on his. Recognition flashed in them. Then, with a roar, it launched itself into the air, weaving between the cannon fire, staying just out of the kill zone. It circled once, keeping the black dragons away from the wall. The people around Jay stared, some in disbelief, some in fear. "What the hell is going on?" a guard muttered. Jace didn't answer. His eyes stayed on Albino. The black dragons regrouped, 3 of them diving together. The Albino didn't flinch. It met them head-on. Claws tore at scales, teeth snapped, and silver blood splattered across the dirt. But the Albino didn't fall back. It fought like the walls behind it were its own den. And in a way, maybe they were. The battle raged until the black dragons began to pull away, retreating toward the mountains. The Albino didn't chase them far. Instead, it circled back and hovered just beyond the shield, staring down at the humans, at Jace. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the rain beginning to fall again. Then the Albino lowered its head, a slow, deliberate gesture, almost like a bow. Jace felt a shiver run down his spine. It remembered, and it had come back, not for revenge, not for food, but to protect him. Before he could step forward, the Albino turned, its great wings slicing through the air, and it rose into clouds. The silver light faded, swallowed by the storm. The sky went dark again. The guards relaxed, lowering their weapons. People began to talk, voices full of confusion. But Jace stayed at the wall, staring at the horizon. He knew this wasn't over. The black dragons would return. And when they did, so would the Albino. But why? Why would it risk itself for him after all these years? And what had driven those black dragons here in the first place? Jace didn't have the answers. But he knew one thing for certain. His life had just changed forever. The rain didn't last long. By morning, the storm had passed, but the settlement felt different. Guards still patrolled the walls, weapons ready. People whispered in the streets, glancing at the sky as if expecting another shadow to fall from it. Jace hadn't slept. He sat in his workshop, a half-repaired engine in front of him, but his hands were still. His mind replayed every detail. The silver light, the black dragons, and the way the Albino had looked at him. That slow bow, that recognition. It hadn't been random. It had been a message. A knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Captain Rourke, head of the settlement guard. A tall man with a voice like gravel. Rourke didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You were seen blowing some kind of whistle at that thing yesterday." Rourke said, "It stopped attacking after that." "Care to explain?" Jace met his gaze. "It wasn't attacking. It was protecting us." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe a wild sky beast risked itself for a human?" "Not for a human," Jace corrected. "For me?" Rourke frowned, waiting. So Jace told him the truth about the storm years ago, the broken wing, the makeshift splint. He left out the part about how he'd sat with it all night, talking to it like it could understand. That was between him and the dragon. When Jace finished, Rourke crossed his arms. "If your story's true, then that thing owes you a debt. But debts don't explain why its friends are trying to tear down my walls." "They weren't its friends," Jace said quietly. "They were hunting it." Rourke didn't answer right away. Then he said, "You're coming with me." They left the settlement through the east gate, riding in a small scout rover. The plains stretched out before them, scattered with rock spires and shallow craters from old battles. After about an hour, Rourke slowed the rover and pointed ahead. The ground was torn up. Massive claw marks scored the dirt, and there were pools of dark blood, some silver, most black. The air smelled faintly of burned ozone. Jace knelt near one of the silver pools. The liquid shimmered faintly, as if tiny sparks danced within it. When he touched it, it was warm, warmer than blood should be. His skin tingled, a strange energy crawling up his arm. "That's not normal," Rourke muttered. Before Jace could answer, a shadow passed over them. He looked up sharply. No wings this time. Something smaller, metal. A drone. Sleek, black, and silent, hovering high above. Rourke swore and pulled his rifle. But before he could fire, the drone zipped away, vanishing into the clouds. Jace felt his stomach sink. "That wasn't ours, was it?" "Not even close," Rourke said grimly. They returned to the settlement, but Jace's mind was already racing. Someone, or something, was watching. And if the black dragons were hunting the Albino, maybe those drones were part of it. That night, Jace was in his workshop when a deep, distant rumble shook the walls. Not an explosion, Not thunder. It was heavier, slower. He stepped outside and froze. The silver light was back. The albino dragon stood on the ridge beyond the wall, its massive wings folded, its silver eyes locked on him. Even from this distance, he could feel the weight of its presence. It made a low, resonant sound, not a roar but a call. Jace felt it in his bones. The guard shouted, weapons rising, but Jace raised his hands. "Don't fire. It's calling me." Rourke appeared beside him, eyes narrowing. "You're not actually thinking of going out there?" "Yes," Jace said, already moving toward the gate. Outside the walls, the air was cool, the grass whispering under the night breeze. The dragon waited, unmoving, until he was close enough to see the faint scars where he'd once patched its wing. Then it lowered its head, opening its mouth slightly. Something small and metallic dropped onto the ground in front of him. Jace crouched and picked it up. It was a piece of broken armor, black, jagged, with strange symbols etched into it. The markings pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. When he looked up, the albino stepped closer. Its eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, he swore he could hear a voice. Not in his ears, but in his mind. "They are coming." Jace's breath caught. "Who?" he whispered. "Skyborn." The image hit him like a dream. Black dragons in the hundreds, blotting out the sun. Cities burning. The albino chained in a dark chamber, its silver light dimming. And then, him, standing in the ruins, holding the same piece of armor in his hand. The vision faded, leaving him shaking. The albino stepped back, spreading its wings. It gave one last low call, then launched into the air, disappearing into clouds. Jay stood there for a long time, clutching the piece of armor. He didn't understand everything, but he knew this was more than just a debt between a man and a dragon. It was a warning. And if the Skyborn were truly coming, no wall in the rim would be high enough to stop them. Jace didn't sleep that night. The broken piece of black armor sat on his workbench, its strange marking still pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Every time he looked at it, he felt the echo of the albino's voice in his mind. They are coming. By morning, the settlement was buzzing with rumors. Some swore they had seen the white dragon circling in the night. Others claimed a swarm of black shapes had been spotted beyond the mountains. The guards tightened patrols, and Captain Rourke doubled the watch shifts. Jace kept quiet. If he told them about the voice in his head, they'd think he was losing his mind. But the truth was heavier than silence. He could feel it pressing on him. That evening, Rourke came to his workshop. "That thing you picked up, let me see it." Jace hesitated, then handed over the armor shard. Rourke turned in his hands, frowning. "This isn't like anything in our database. Looks alive." "It is," Jace said before thinking. Rourke's eyes snapped to him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't think it's just metal. It's grown, not made, like bone, but harder, and it's listening." Rourke studied him for a long moment. "You're starting to sound like the old miners who think the mountains talk to them." "Maybe they do," Jace muttered, taking the shard back. That night, Jace worked alone, scanning the shard with his old field analyzer. The readout made no sense. No consistent atomic structure, no clear alloy signature, just layered patterns like the rings of a tree, each one faintly glowing. Then, without warning, the lights in his workshop flickered. The shard warmed in his hand. A voice, not the albino's, slid into his mind. "You hold the mark of a hunter. Return it, or be marked as prey." Jay stumbled back, dropping the shard. It hit the floor with a heavy, unnatural weight. He stared at it, his heart pounding. Hunters. Prey. The Skyborn weren't just a threat to the albino. They were coming for anyone connected to it. 2 days later, Jace got his proof. It was just before dawn when the first tremor shook the ground. Not an earthquake. This was heavier, rhythmic. A sound followed, like drums in the deep sky. The air grew thick and the horizon darkened. From the watchtower, the guards shouted in alarm. Movement in Sector 3. Airborne. Jace ran to the wall. His stomach turned cold. The black dragons had returned, but this time there were more. Dozens. Their wings cut through the air like knives, and their eyes burned with red light. The albino wasn't with them. The settlement guns opened fire, but the black dragons didn't dive. Instead, they circled just out of range, their formation tight, their movements precise. This was an attack. It was a message. Then, as one, they turned toward the mountains and disappeared into the mist. While the guards argued over what it meant, Jace felt the answer in his bones. The Skyborn were gathering, and they wanted the Albino. But why? And why warn the settlement first? That night, Jace took the old rover and drove beyond the east ridge. He followed the trail the Albino had left before, the faint silver glow in the rocks guiding him. Hours passed, until the land turned jagged and steep. Then he saw it, high on a cliff, wings folded, watching him with those molten silver eyes. The Albino lowered its head, let him climb the last few meters to reach it. Up close, it was even larger than he remembered, muscles coiled under shimmering white scales, blue veins pulsing faintly. But there was something else now. Faint scars along its neck, deep and sharp, as if from chains. "You've been in a fight," Jay said quietly. The dragon blinked slowly. Then the voice returned in his head. "They are not dragons. They are Skyborn. They ruled the skies before your kind came. I am the last of my flight." Jace's throat tightened. "They're hunting you because you're different?" "Because I carry the light mark. Without it, they cannot open the gates." The words made no sense to him, but he could feel their weight. "Then they won't stop. Not until I am ash or theirs," the Albino finished. Jace looked back toward the horizon, where the faint glimmer of the settlement lights flickered in the distance. If the Skyborn attacked in full force, those lights would vanish in a single night. "You saved us once," Jace said. "Let me help you this time." The Albino tilted its head, studying him for a long, unblinking moment. Then it extended one massive claw. Something glowed faintly on its talon, a thin, silver band. When it touched his chest, the band pulsed and sank into his skin, leaving a faint circular mark over his heart. Jace gasped at the sudden heat. "Now you carry my mark," the voice said. "We fight together." And just like that, Jace knew his life wasn't his anymore. The war of the Skyborn had found him, and the only way forward was to meet it head-on. The mark over Jace's heart still glowed faintly as he rode back toward the settlement with the albino dragon flying overhead. Every beat of his heart seemed to pulse in rhythm with the creature's wing beats. He didn't understand the magic or technology behind it, but he knew one thing. The bond was real now. By the time they reached the outer ridges, the wind had picked up. Dark clouds churned over the mountains, thick and heavy. Jace slowed the rover and stared upward. Shapes were moving in the clouds. Not birds, not ships, wings. The first black Skyborn hunter dropped from the mist like a living spear, its claws slicing the air. Behind it, more followed, 5, then 10, then more than he could count. Their eyes glowed red, their mouths flickering with heat like the inside of a furnace. The albino roared, a deep sound that shook the rocks. The hunters answered with screeches that made Jace's skin crawl. They were here for blood. "Let's move." Jace shouted, slamming the rover into gear. The albino swept low, its tail lashing, smashing 2 hunters into the cliffside. Another came from above, claws extended toward Jace. He swerved hard, the rover skidding in the mud, and the beast's talons missed him by inches. Energy blasts lit the sky as the albino opened its mouth. But it wasn't fire, it was light. A beam of pure silver tore through clouds, striking a hunter mid-flight. The black creature's body twisted, its armor cracking, and then it fell in silence. Jace gripped the wheel tighter. He'd seen weapons. He'd seen plasma cannons. But nothing like that. And the Skyborn didn't like it. 3 hunters broke formation, diving together at the albino. The dragon banked hard, drawing them away from Jace, but more kept coming. They weren't just here to kill. They were trying to surround, trap, overwhelm. The mark on Jace's chest burned suddenly. He didn't know why, but his hands moved without thinking. He swerved the rover toward a narrow pass in the cliffs. The albino saw and followed, its body folding into the tight space just as hunters slammed into the rock walls behind them. The sound of stone breaking filled the air. Dust rained down, but the path ahead was clear. "Keep going," Jace shouted. though the dragon couldn't hear with ears. It just knew. The bond carried more than words. It carried intent. They burst out of the pass into a wide canyon. Too wide. The hunters poured in after them, wings blotting out the sky. The albino twisted midair, spinning to face them. Its silver light brightened until it hurt to look at. The mark on Jace's chest pulsed harder, faster. His vision blurred, and for a heartbeat, he was a dragon. He felt the wind on his wings, the ache in his old scar, the cold hunger of the skyborn pressing in around him. Then the light exploded outward in a wave. It washed over the canyon, throwing the hunters back like leaves of storm. Some crashed into the canyon walls. Others tumbled out of the air entirely. When the glow faded, only a few were left, and they retreated, vanishing into the clouds with frustrated screeches. The albino landed heavily on a flat ledge, chest heaving. Its silver eyes locked on Jace. They will send more, the voice in his head warned. The mark makes you their enemy now. Jace stepped closer, his hand on its warm scales. Then we'll fight. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. Fighting them out here was suicide. They needed allies, weapons, a plan. The albino's head lowered slightly, almost like agreement. Then I will take you to the last place they fear. Jace frowned. Where? The dragon's gaze shifted to the far horizon, where black clouds swirled endlessly over a jagged peak. The hollow sky. The journey to the hollow sky began before dawn. Jace packed light, just his toolkit, a rifle, and some rations. The albino crouched low to let him climb onto its back, the white scales cool under his hands. The wind was cold at high altitude, stinging his face. The world below turned from rocky plains to sharp mountains. The further they flew, the darker the sky became. Thick black clouds swirled in unnatural patterns, rumbling like distant drums. The mark over Jace's heart burned faintly. He didn't know if it was warning him, or if the albino's presence made it react. Either way, the hollow sky felt wrong, like they were flying to the lungs of something ancient and alive. They landed on a jagged ridge overlooking a massive crater. Inside, the ground was covered in black glass, cracked and scorched. Faint blue mist curled upward from the cracks, vanishing into the low clouds. Jace shivered. What happened here? The first war, the albino's voice echoed in his mind. Skyborn against skyborn. This place burned for 1,000 years. Jace stepped to the edge of the crater. The air was heavy, every breath tasting faintly of metal. He could feel something watching, not with eyes, but with presence. The albino led him down into the crater. As they walked, Jason noticed strange shapes in the glass. Huge bones, fused into the surface as if they had melted there. Wings, claws, skulls bigger than houses. At the center of the crater stood a black monolith, taller than the settlement's wall. Strange silver veins pulsed faintly across its surface, like it was breathing. The albino stopped before it, lowering its head. Touch it, the voice urged. Jace hesitated. Why me? Because you are not skyborn. The seal will open for your kind. He reached out, placed his palm on the cool stone. Instantly, the mark over his heart flared and the monolith shuddered. The silver veins brightened, spreading like lightning across its surface. A deep hum rose from within, shaking the ground. Then the surface split open, revealing a dark tunnel leading down into the earth. The tunnel was narrow, the walls lined with the same silver-veined stone. Faint light pulsed along the floor, guiding their steps. Jace's footsteps echoed. He could hear the albino's breathing behind him, slow and steady. After what felt like an hour, they entered a massive chamber, and Jace froze. Suspended in the center was a sphere of silver light, swirling with shapes too fast to follow. Around it stood 4 statues of dragons, not skyborn hunters, but something different. They were noble, their faces calm, their wings folded in peace. The last memory of my flight, the albino said, quietly, this place holds our soul light. If it falls into skyborn hands, they will open the gates. Jace frowned. What's beyond the gates? The albino's eyes darkened. A world they lost and want back. Your world. Before Jace could ask more, the mark on his chest pulsed sharply. The chamber's light dimmed. The albino growled low. They followed us. From the tunnel behind them came the sound of claws on stone. The first hunter appeared, a black skyborn, its body scraping the walls, eyes burning red. Another followed, and another. They had found the hollow sky. Jace grabbed his rifle. We can't let them get that thing. The albino roared, stepping between the hunters and the silver sphere. Its wings flared wide, the light from its veins brightening until the chamber walls glowed. The first hunter lunged, but the albino's tail whipped around, smashing it into the wall. Jace fired at the second, the bullet sparking against its armor, but slowing enough for the albino to slam it aside. More poured in. The chamber shook with the impact of their bodies, the air thick with heat and the metallic stench of their breath. The albino's voice cut into Jace's mind. If I fall, destroy the sphere. Jace's heart clenched. Not happening. The fight became chaos, light and shadow clashing in the silver glow. Jace moved fast, using his tools as weapons, hurling a plasma torch into a hunter's face, forcing it back. The albino fought like a storm-given form, its claws slicing through armor, its roar shaking the stone. Then, as suddenly as it began, the remaining hunters pulled back, retreating into the tunnel. The albino stood panting, silver blood dripping from deep claw marks on its side. They'll be back, Jay said. Yes, the albino answered. And next time, they will not come alone. Jace looked up at the sphere of light. If the Skyborn wanted it this badly, then it wasn't just the albino's fight anymore. It was his too. The air in the hollow sky chamber was still heavy after the fight. Jace's hands were shaking, his rifle nearly empty. The albino stood between him and the silver sphere, its chest heaving, blood running down its flank in slow streams. You need help? Jace said, stepping forward. But the albino shook its head. The wound will close. The time is short. Jace looked up at the glowing sphere. Tell me what's so important about this thing. Why do they want it so badly? The albino's silver eyes locked onto him. Because inside this light is the memory of the first flight. My kind once ruled the skies, not in war but in balance. The Skyborn were our kin, but they turned to hunger. They wanted not only the skies of this world, but the skies of all worlds. It stepped closer, its massive head lowering until Jace could see his own reflection in its eyes. The gates they speak of are not doors of stone. They are rivers of space, hidden until the light mark opens them. The one who carries it can guide the light to the gates. That one is you. Jace's breath caught. Me? Why me? Because when you healed my wing, you changed my fate. The bond formed then. My life is tied to yours, and the light mark answers only to the bonded pair. Jace stepped back, the weight of the words sinking in. So if they kill you, the light mark dies with you. But if they kill me, then the light mark falls into their claws unguarded. The meaning was clear. He wasn't just in danger. He was a target. The albino moved toward the silver sphere. Its massive claws rested on the glass-like surface beneath it, and the sphere's light flared. Images appeared in the air, flying cities, dragons of every color soaring above them. Then fire and ash as the Skyborn hunters brought ruin. The vision shifted. Jace saw himself and the albino flying together through a storm of black wings, the light mark glowing over his heart. And then, a door of pure light opening in the sky, pulling the Skyborn into it like a great tide. When the vision ended, Jace staggered, his breath coming hard. That was the plan? To send them away? To banish them beyond the far winds, the albino said. But to do so, we must reach the gate before they do. Jace clenched his fists. Then we can't wait for them to come here. We take the fight to them. The albino's eyes narrowed in approval. You speak as one of the flight. They left the hollow sky before dawn. The storm clouds above the craters seemed to follow them, the wind carrying the scent of ash. Jace rode on the albino's back. The horizon stretched wide before them. He could see the faint shimmer of the settlement far in the distance, and he thought about the people there. People who had no idea their lives were hanging by a thread. They landed on a plateau overlooking the plains. From here, Jace could see the mountain range where the Skyborn had first appeared. Dark shapes moved in the clouds over those peaks. Too many to count. They're gathering, Jace muttered. Yes, the albino answered. And when they come, they will not stop until this world is theirs. Jace climbed down, pacing the cold air. We need more than just the two of us. If the settlement's guards believe you're not the enemy, maybe they'll fight with us. The albino tilted its head. They will fear me. Fear blinds the mind. Then I'll make them see the truth, Jace said. You protected them once. We'll make them remember. They reached the settlement by midday. The walls bristled with weapons, the guards tense as the albino landed outside the gates. People screamed and scrambled for cover, but Jace stepped forward, raising his hands. Listen to me, he shouted. It's not here to kill you, it's here to save you. Rourke appeared on the wall, rifle in hand. You're walking in with a monster at your back, Jace. No, Jace said firmly. I'm walking in with the only thing standing between us and the skyborn army gathering over those mountains. He told them everything, the light mark, the gates, the hollow sky. Some faces softened. Others stayed hard with distrust. But when he described the coming swarm, even the most stubborn guard went pale. Rourke lowered his rifle. If what you're saying is true, we're going to need more than courage. We'll need weapons that can punch through that black armor. Jace smiled faintly. Good thing I'm a mechanic. The next days were a blur. Jace and settlement engineers worked side by side, modifying cannons, building energy projectors using the albino's silver light as a power source. The dragon stayed near the walls, its presence a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. Every night, Jace felt the light mark pulse, sometimes waking him with flashes of skyborn ships, claws, burning skies. The bond was stronger now. He could sense the albino's thoughts even without words, and he could feel its pain when it moved too much on its wounded side. On the third night, he stood on the wall, staring toward the mountains. The clouds were glowing faintly red now. The albino landed beside him, silent. Tomorrow, it said simply. They come. Jace nodded slowly. His hands tightened on the wall's edge. Then tomorrow, he said, we end this. Dawn broke with no warmth. The sky over the mountains was black, a wall of cloud rolling toward the settlement like a living tide. Every man, woman, and child who could hold a weapon stood ready on the walls. The rest were deep in the bunkers, the heavy doors sealed shut. Jace stood at the main gate, his rifle slung over his shoulder, the light mark glowing faintly through his shirt. The albino crouched beside him, its wings folded tight, silver veins pulsing brighter than he'd ever seen. They're coming, Jace said quietly. A sound rolled over the plains, a deep, slow thrum, like the heartbeat of the sky itself. It grew louder, joined by the distant screeches of the skyborn hunters. Then the first shapes appeared in the clouds. Black wings. Dozens. Then hundreds. The settlement cannons roared to life, plasma bolts streaking upward. Some found their mark, tearing through skyborn armor, sending burning bodies spiraling into the earth. But for every one that fell, two more appeared. The first wave hit the walls like a storm. Hunters slammed into the shields, claws sparking against the energy barriers. Others dove over the top, forcing the guards into close combat. Jace fired into the sky, hitting a hunter that was diving for a group of engineers. The beast crumpled in midair, crashing into the dirt just meters away. The albino launched itself upward, slamming into a cluster of hunters, scattering them like leaves. Its silver light cut to the black swarm, but the enemy adapted fast, circling in tighter formations to avoid direct hits. A shout came from the west wall. They're breaching. Jace ran, the light mark burning hotter with every step. He reached the breach just as a hunter tore a hole in the shield, its claws shredding the projector housing. The energy field flickered, then died. The skyborn poured through the gap. Fall back to the second line. Rourke shouted, but Jace didn't move back. He dropped to one knee, pulling a plasma torch from his belt. Keep them off me, he yelled. Two guards formed a wall in front of him, firing at the advancing hunters. Jace worked fast, reconnecting the severed cables, fusing the broken housing with quick welds. Sparks showered his gloves, the smell of burning metal mixing with the stench of skyborn blood. A shadow fell over him. A hunter had slipped past the guards, its mouth opening wide, heat glowing in its throat. Before it could strike, a silver blur slammed into it. The albino pinned the beast to the ground, teeth closing on its neck until the armor cracked. With a final wrench, it tore the hunter aside, clearing the space around Jace. The projector came back online with a hum, the shield snapping shut just as another wave hit. The hunters smashed against it and were thrown back. The albino's voice filled Jace's mind. The gate is waking. Jace looked toward the mountains. Through the clouds, he could see it now, a tear of white light opening in the sky, its edges flickering like fire. The Skyborn were streaming toward it, not just hunters but larger shapes, commanders, their wings longer, their armor heavier. They're not here to take the settlement, Jace realized. They're here to hold us down while the rest go for the gate. The albino's silver eyes locked on his. We must go. Now. Jace turned to Rourke. Hold the walls as long as you can. If we stop them at the gate, this ends. Rourke's jaw tightened. You'd better come back, Jace. The albino crouched low, and Jace climbed onto its back. With a powerful surge of its wings, they shot into the air, leaving the battle below. The wind howled past them, the light mark glowing brighter with every beat of the albino's heart. Hunters saw them and broke off from the swarm, streaking through the sky to intercept. The albino rolled, diving through the gaps in their formation, its tail smashing two from the air. One hunter latched onto its wing, claws digging deep. Jay swung his rifle and fired point-blank, the blast tearing through the creature's head. It fell, tumbling into the clouds below. The gate grew larger, its light spilling across the dark clouds. Jace could feel its pull, a strange pressure in his bones. The light mark on his chest throbbed in time with it. As they closed the distance, the true scale of the Skyborn army became clear. Hundreds of hunters circled the gate, and at the center stood something far larger, a Skyborn lord. Its armor was black as night, its horns like curved blades, its wings stretching wider than a warship. The albino's voice was sharp in his mind. That is the warlord. If it passes the gate, no world will be safe. Jace tightened his grip. Then we stop it here. The warlord turned its head, red eyes locking on them. Its roar split the sky, and the swarm shifted, closing in from all sides. The albino banked hard, diving straight toward the heart of the swarm. Light flared from his mouth, blasting a hole through the wall of wings, and they plunged through, straight toward the warlord. The warlord's roar was like thunder tearing the sky apart. The shockwave hit Jason the albino hard, rattling his bones and making the light mark burn against his chest. Around them, the swarm of hunters tightened into a living wall, moving as one to shield their leader. The albino didn't slow. With a single powerful beat of its wings, it shot upward, rolling over the top of the swarm before diving straight at the warlord. Silver light blazed along its scales, the glow so bright it turned the black clouds pale. The warlord opened its jaws, and fire, not light, but burning black fire, rushed out like a flood. The albino twisted midair, the blast missing by inches, but the heat was like a furnace, scorching Jace's cheek even from the saddle. Two hunters dove from above, claws extended. Jace swung his rifle up, firing in short bursts. One went down in a spin of broken wings. The other clipped the albino's flank, drawing a pained roar. The mark on Jace's chest pulsed harder. For a split second his vision blurred, and he saw through the albino's eyes, saw the warlord's armor, saw the tiny glowing fractures where silver light could break through. There! Jace shouted aloud, pointing. Left wing joint. The albino understood. It tucked its wings and dove, skimming under the warlord's massive body before snapping upward, its claws raking across the joint. Silver light seared into the black armor, cracking it wide. The warlord howled in fury, its huge tail swinging. The impact was like being hit by a falling wall. Jace held on with both hands, the world spinning as the albino was thrown sideways into a cloud bank. They burst out the other side, only to be swarmed by hunters again. Jace yanked a plasma grenade from his belt. Hang on. He armed it and hurled it into the thickest cluster. The explosion ripped a hole through the swarm, silver and red sparks raining through the air. The albino dove through the gap, wings cutting the wind like blades. The warlord was ahead now, circling the gate. Its massive form was framed by the blinding white light, the pull of the opening threatening to drag them all inside. The albino's voice filled Jace's head. We must push it into the gate. Once inside, the light mark will close it forever. Jace's pulse spiked. And if we get pulled in too, then we go together. The warlord saw them coming and dove to meet them. The two dragons collided in midair with a sound like mountains breaking. Claws tore at scales. Teeth snapped at throats. Jace ducked low as the warlord's talons swung dangerously close. The albino's silver light flared again, but the warlord twisted, using its larger body to force them downward toward the swirling clouds. They were falling, fast. Jace leaned forward, pressing his hand to the albino's neck. Up! Don't let it pin you. The albino's wings snapped open, the sudden lift jerking them upward again. But the warlord was fast in the climb, slamming into their side and sending them spinning. Jace's fingers brushed the light mark. A jolt shot through him, heat and vision mixing again. He saw the warlord's chest, the faint shimmer of an inner core beating like a heart. That was it, the weak point, center chest. Jace shouted, hit it with everything. The albino roared and charged. The warlord met them head-on. Black fire clashed with silver light, the explosion of colors turning the sky into a storm of shadows and sparks. The force of the impact drove them both toward the gate. The pull of its gravity grew stronger, the air bending around them. Jace could feel it tugging at his body, his bones humming like metal near a magnet. The albino struck first. Its claws slammed into the warlord's chest, right where Jace had seen the shimmer. Silver light poured in, cracking the armor wide. The warlord screamed, thrashing violently, but the albino didn't let go. Jace was almost torn from the saddle as the two dragons tumbled toward the gate. Hunters tried to intercept, but the albino's tail lashed out, scattering them like leaves in a gale. The gate's light swallowed everything. Jace could no longer tell up from down. The roar of the wind was deafening, the pull irresistible. The warlord fought, wings straining to break free, but the albino's grip only tightened. Now Jace! The light mark on his chest flared blinding white. Jace felt the heat surge from his body into the albino, the bond between them locking like steel. Silver light erupted from the dragon's body, engulfing them both and wrapping around the warlord like chains. The great black beast was dragged into the heart of the gate, its roar echoing like thunder fading into a storm. The gate's light began to collapse, folding in on itself. The pull vanished. The albino, wings straining, broke free at the last second, shooting out into open sky as the gate sealed shut with sound like a great breath exhaled. They hovered there for a moment, the battlefield suddenly quiet. The hunters, leaderless, scattered in all directions, vanishing into the clouds. Jace sagged forward, his hands trembling. The albino's voice came softly. It is done. But deep inside, Jace knew wars didn't end this clean. The warlord was gone, but the Skyborn weren't finished. Not yet. The wind was soft now. No black clouds. No roaring hunters. Only the quiet stretch of open sky as the albino glided over plains, carrying Jace back toward the settlement. Below, the land looked different, like a world waking from a long nightmare. The sun touched the grass with gold, and the mountains no longer wore the dark crown of the Skyborn swarm. Jace's muscles ached. His hands were raw from gripping the albino's scales, and his clothes were burned in patches from near misses. But the light mark on his chest was calm now, its glow faint and steady, like the heartbeat of something finally at rest. The settlement gates were open when they landed. Guards and civilians alike poured out, their faces a mix of shock and relief. Rourke was the first to approach. His usual hard stare softened. "You made it back," he said simply. Jace gave a tired smile. "Told you I would." His gaze swept over the crowd. They were looking at the albino, some with fear still in their eyes, but others with awe. The dragon stood tall, wings half spread, the silver in its veins pulsing like quiet thunder. One small child stepped forward, holding a battered tin cup. The albino bent its head slowly, letting the child touch its muzzle. The crowd gasped, but no one moved to stop it. In that moment, something shifted. The fear began to melt. Rourke pulled Jace aside. You really think it's over? Jace's eyes went to the horizon. The warlord's gone, but the Skyborn still exist, and they'll remember this day. Rourke grunted. Then we better remember it too. The albino's voice brushed against Jace's thoughts. Your kind will rebuild, but when the winds darken again, I will come. Jace touched the scar over his heart where the light mark lay. And I'll be ready. The days that followed were busy. The settlement repaired the damaged walls and reinforced the shield projectors. Hunters' bodies, what was left of them, were taken outside the gates and burned. Jay spent hours with the engineers, sharing what he had learned from the albino's light, adapting some of the technology into defense systems. But no matter what work was being done, people still came to see the albino. Some brought gifts of food or cloth. Others simply stood and watched, whispering to each other. The dragon never seemed bothered, only watching the skies as if listening for a call only it could hear. On the 7th night after the battle, the albino came to Jace's workshop. It lowered its head, so their eyes met. I must go, it said. Jace's chest tightened. Go? Where? The winds carry whispers. Other worlds. Other gates. If the Skyborn try again, I must be there. Jace swallowed hard. So that's it? I don't even get to thank you properly. You already have. The albino's voice rumbled gently. The day you freed my wing, you gave me back my flight. The rest is just returning the gift. It turned to leave, but Jace stepped forward, resting a hand on its neck. Don't take too long to come back. The albino's silver eyes glimmered in the moonlight. The bond remains. When you call, I will hear. Before dawn, the settlement woke to the sound of mighty wings. The albino rose into the pink and gold sky, climbing higher until it was only a glint of silver against the clouds. Then it was gone, vanishing into the wide, endless world beyond. Jay stood at the gate long after it had disappeared. The light mark was quiet, but warm, like a silent promise. For now, the world was safe. But somewhere out there, the winds were already shifting. And when the shadows returned, so would the silver wings.